Snacking Swifters.
This is Prof G, and in this video we're going to learn how to overcome some of Firebase's built-in limitations. It's actually more of a security feature. You can't write code to list all of the users in your app, but we'll take a look at the information that we do have on each user as they log in, and then we'll use this information to create our own users collection with a document for each user. Now this will also be a chance for us to work with two collections at the same level. In our app, that'll be the spots collection and the users collection, and we'll set up for the next video where we'll add a users button to list all of the users in our app along with their profile photo. So let's build! So while Cloud Firestore's console lets you as the developer see who's logged into your project, you can't just get a list of users the same way you can query the database and say something like, show me all the spots. There's no single command to code that into our app. But what we can do is we've seen that we can get information on any individual user who's logged in. That's how we've been getting the email address and the unique UID or user identifier so that we can verify if a user has posted a given review or a photo. So what we're going to do is this. When the user logs in for the first time, we'll get information from this current user data structure, and then we'll use it to populate a database collection that we'll call users. So just like we keep track of spots, we're going to keep track of users too. Now we'll have to create a users class. We'll call it SnackUser because we don't want to confuse it with an already existing user class that's part of the Firebase system. And SnackUser will have properties that we get directly from current user. Then each time somebody logs into the system, we'll check to see if that user has a document in the users collection. Now, if they do have a document, we'll just log them in. We're already keeping track of them in our app accessible collection. But if they don't have a document, then this is the first time they've logged into the system. So we'll create a document based on information we can get from this current user data structure. Then when any user in the app presses on the users button at the top of the spots list, they can segue to another table view that shows all of the users in the system. Now we'll need a SnackUsers plural class as well, so we can handle getting all of the users at once, but we know how to handle all of these techniques. Nothing's new here, so let's code this up and finish the app. So first we need a SnackUsers class. I'm going to put that right underneath photos. So I'm going to right click on photos, select new file, Swift file, next, and the class name is going to be SnackUser, upper camel case, one word, click create. And we're going to use Firebase, so we should import Firebase right from the start, and then we'll say class, SnackUser, upper camel case, open and close curlies. Then we'll declare our class properties, var email :string, var display name, lower camel case :string, var photo with capital URL :string, var user since, lower camel case :date, and var document ID :string. Now, just like all of our other classes, we need to create a dictionary computed property, and this is going to be used to convert all of our class properties to a dictionary so we can write those out to Cloud Firestore. So we'll say var dictionary : and in brackets string : any, open and close curlies. Then remember, we can't save an Apple date out to Cloud Firestore, so we need to convert that to a time interval. So we'll say let time interval date equals user since, which is our Apple date, dot time interval since 1970. And on the next line, we'll say return, open and close brackets, and in between the brackets, we'll put in all of the key value pairs that we're passing into this dictionary. And our key string will be the same as the variable name, so I'll just copy them from above, first copying email. So we have the string email : email, comma, the string display name : display name, comma, the string photo URL : photo URL, comma. Now we will put in the string user since date, but we'll follow that with time interval date, and we don't need to add the document ID because we don't save that out to Cloud Firestore, since that will be the name of our SnackUser document. And then we create our base initializer. So we'll say init, open and close parens, and inside we'll pass in parameters for all of the properties of this class. So we'll say email : string, comma, display name : string, comma, photo URL : string, comma, user since : date, and comma, document ID : string. Then open and close curlies. Then inside of the curlies, let's set each of our class properties equal to these arguments. So we'll say self.email equals email, self.displayname equals displayname, self.photoURL equals photoURL, self.userSince equals userSince, and self.documentID equals documentID. Next up, we'll create our first convenience initializer, but instead of initializing a new SnackUser with no parameters passed in, we're going to create an initializer that passes in a single parameter. It's going to be a user object. That's a Firebase type user, and that's the same data structure that we get our current user from. So it's got all of those additional properties, email, display name, UID, and that's great because we can use all of these properties to initialize our new SnackUser. So we'll say convenience, init, and then in between parentheses, we'll have lowercase user, capital user, open and close curlies. Then inside, when we break out the different properties of user, we have to pay attention to the fact that many times these things might be nil, so we'll use nil coalescing throughout this. So we'll say let email equal user.email, then question mark, empty string, let display name equals user.displayname question mark empty string. Let photo URL equal, and this one here is going to be a little bit trickier because we're going to get back a URL, but we want to convert that to a string. So we're going to use a ternary operator for this. So we're going to write out user.photo URL. And again, you can see right here in code completion, this is going to return an optional URL type, not a string. So we'll check to see if that URL value is not equal to nil. Then with a ternary operator, we say question mark, and then we follow this with the condition to pass into photo URL if photo.url is not equal to nil. So if that first part is true, and if it is true, what we want to do is we want to convert user.photoURL to a string. So we'll say in between double quotes, string interp, user.photoURL exclamation point. Otherwise, we say colon, and that'll be the case if user.photoURL equals nil. So if not equal nil equals false. And in that case, we'll just pass in an empty string. And why don't we take all of these values that are inside of this ternary operator and enclose those in parentheses. Now those three values are the only values that are optionals, and we'll deal with everything else when we call back to our base initializer. So I'm going to say self.init, and for simplicity, I'm going to copy all of the properties in between the parentheses for the initializer above, paste that after the init, then change email colon string to email colon email, display name colon string to display name colon display name. The string after photo URL becomes photo URL. Then user since should be capital date, open and close parens. That'll just set it to the current date and time. And finally, document ID, instead of passing in string, we'll pass in user.uid. Now UID is already a unique number, so that'll make a great document ID. We don't need Firestore to generate one with the add document method, nor will we need to create one using the UUID string in Swift. Next up is our convenience initializer that will take string any key value pairs that come back as that dictionary read in from Cloud Firestore, and we'll convert those into a SnackUser object. So we'll set this up with convenience init, and in parentheses dictionary colon, and in brackets string colon any, open and close curlies. Now remember, to break out the values, we're going to pass in keys into our dictionary. Keys are strings. They're supposed to be paired up with values. Now if the key is correct, we should match up with a value and get a value out of this. But those values, if the keys don't match, will give us a nil. So we need to deal with nil coalescing. So we'll start out here by saying let email equals dictionary, brackets, and in between is the string email as exclamation point string question mark, then question mark in case it's nil, then we'll pass back the empty string. Then I'll highlight this line that I just wrote, copy it, paste it down below. I'll change email to display name. I'll copy display name. I'll paste it in as the key in between quotes. Everything else is going to be the same. Always make sure that your key names are spelled exactly like you spelled your property names. Then I'm going to highlight the line that I just wrote, copy it, paste it down below, and I'm going to change display name to photo URL as both my constant and as the key that I'm passing in. I'll copy the line again, paste it in. Photo URL is going to become time interval date, but time interval date is not my key. My key is user since lower camel case, and you can verify that by scrolling up. Yep, our dictionary property returned the key user since for the time interval date. That's what you've got to make sure is in between your double quotes. Otherwise, after the as exclamation point, it's going to be capital time interval question mark, and then question mark, capital time interval, open and close parens. Then on the line below that, we'll say let user since equals capital date, select the option with time interval since 1970, pass in the time interval date, then we'll copy the call to the base initializer from the convenience initializer above. We can paste that down below to finish out this convenience initializer, but we need to change user since. We're not passing in today's date, we're passing in user since. And for document ID here, we're passing in an empty string. And that's because we don't get the document ID from the dictionary. After we convert the dictionary to a SnackUser object, we're going to go ahead and assign that directly from the document ID of the document we just read. So now let's write a function to save the user document if this is a new user. We'll call the function saveIfNewUser. So a quick look at the logic of what we're going to do. We'll create a document reference to our new users collection. Note that this is a different collection from the spots collection. This new collection is at the same level of spots in our database. Now each document in the users collection will also have a document ID that we've set using the user's unique UID. We set that up in the convenience initializer we just wrote that passed in that user object. And then we'll try to get the documents. We'll check to see if we get an error. If we do, it didn't work. We'll check to see if the document exists. If a document for this user does exist, we'll return saying we've completed things and all is fine, but we don't need to create a new document. But if that document doesn't exist, we'll try to save a new user's document with that user's UID as its document ID. And if that works, we'll say we've completed things. That's it. Let's code. So just before the end of our SnackUser class, let's define this function with func saveIfNewUser, open parens. We'll have a completion handler, completion colon escaping, in parentheses bool, draw an arrow, open and close parens. We should have a closing paren there too, open and close curlies. Then we'll declare a database object like we always have. So we'll say let db equals Firestore.firestore. Then we'll create a document reference to the document that we're trying to access. We're checking to see if it exists. So we'll say let userref equals db.collection. In parentheses, we'll pass in lowercase users as the string. So in between double quotes, that's our new collection. Then .document, and in between parentheses here, we pass in document ID. And again, that document ID has already been set to the user's unique UID. Then we'll use that document reference to see if we can get the document. So we just say userref.getDocument, select this option here with the completion handler, then double click it for the trailing closure format. Then we'll set document snapshot to document, we'll set error to error. Then we'll check to see if we do have an error and we'll deal with it. So we'll say guard error equals nil, else open close curlies. Now in between the curlies, if we don't pass this guard statement, then we'll say return completion and in parentheses false. And then above this, we'll print out an error statement saying print error could not access document for user, string interp, document ID, put an angry emoji in front, and Xcode's reminding us we've got to put self in front of document ID inside the string interp. Then we'll use another guard statement to check to see if the document exists. So we'll say guard document ? Dot exists. Now we haven't used the dot exists property before. Let's see how it returns a bool. So select that. And we'll say equals false, else open and close curlies. Now if it's true that the document exists, we're inside of the curly, so we'll just return with completion true. Everything's fine. We just don't need to create a document. So we'll say return completion in parentheses true. And if you want, above this, you can put in a confirming print statement with print. The document for user string interp self.document ID already exists. No need to recreate it. Then I'll add thumbs up emoji. Then if we get this far, we need to create our new document. So the first thing that we'll do is we'll set the dictionary so that we can save that out to Cloud Firestore. We'll say let data to save, colon, and in brackets string, colon, any. We actually didn't need to declare the type, but again, it's a nice reference, equals self.dictionary. Then we're going to save this dictionary to a specific location. So first let's set up the location with db.collection, in parentheses the string users, .document, in parentheses document ID, the method is setData. Select this option with the completion handler. For our document data, pass in data to save, double click the completion handler, trailing closure format. You can set the error to error. Then let's put in a guard statement, make sure everything cleared okay. We'll say guard error equals nil, else open and close curlies, return completion in parentheses false. May your code never see this statement, but if so, above this we'll print out our error statement with print error string interp, error exclamation point localized description, could not save data for string interp self.document ID. Otherwise, it works. So below this guard statement, we'll say return completion and in parentheses true. Oh, and Xcode is reminding me up here, I need to put a self in front of my document ID because we're inside of a closure. But ladies and gentlemen, that completes our SnackUser class. So now let's use it by heading on over to loginviewcontroller.swift. And now let's jump down to the sign-in function, and we want to deal with the else clause here. So this is the situation where the user has already logged in. And at this point, we know we've got a valid user. We just want to check to see if we've got a user document for them. So now we need to create a SnackUser object so that we can call savelfNewUser, that function that we just wrote. But we need to create a SnackUser by passing in a valid user object. So first, let's create that user object. And we'll do that in a guard statement with guard let current user equals lowercase auth UI dot auth question mark dot current user else open and close curlies. Now if we can't get the current user, this should never happen, but if so, we'll return. And above this, we'll print out an error with print error couldn't get current user. Put an angry out front. Then below this, we'll say let SnackUser equals capital SnackUser, open parentheses. We want to select the initializer that passes in the user. I was running into some more code completion problems with derived data, so I quit out of here, deleted my derived data. Now things are working. Hopefully you don't have those problems, but if you notice the jump cut, that's why it's there. And so to continue, we'll pass in the user as current user. And on the next line, we can call SnackUser.saveIfNewUser. Select that, double click on the completion handler. Our bool should be success. Inside, we can say if success, open and close curlies, else open and close curlies. Then I'm going to highlight my whole perform segue statement down here, cut that out. Then in between the positive if curlies, I'll start with self dot and then paste in the perform segue I just cut. In the else condition, hopefully you will never see an error, but if that is the case, we'll print out an error message with print error, tried to save a new SnackUser but failed. We'll put an angry in front of that and scroll to the top. We're ready to build and run and check out this part of our code. Now, in the demo here, as soon as you run your app, it will run the sign-in function, and if you've already logged in, you get a users collection created with a document for that user. So in order to show you the full process, what I've done is first signed out of my app, then I've gone back into my database console, and I deleted any users collection that might have existed. Now let's watch what happens together as I log in. So we currently have just the spots collection. There's no user collection. And I'll sign in as John.Gallagher. So here we go. I've logged in. Now the change has been made in Cloud Firestore. I just have to go up here and refresh my browser. And ho-ho! We can see that our code has created the new users collection. We've got our new record for John Gallagher in there. In fact, we can see this doc ID is YSYFOG. Now, where did that come from? Let's head over to the authentication panel in our console, and we can see the different users for our app. And sure enough, John.Gallagher has the user ID YSYFOG. Perfect. So let's head back to the database. Hey, what's this photo URL? Well, Google allows us to get a URL to show the person's Google profile pic if they've created one. So in the next video, we'll learn how to show this in a list of users. We'll even learn how to show the profile pic in a nice little circular crop that you see on so many different websites. But I think we've done enough for this video. Feel free to sign out and then sign in as different users. You should see a new user's record created for each of them. You now know how to have two collections at the same level in Cloud Firestore. Our app has both a spots collection and a users collection. You also learned how to create a running database of all of the users in your system. Nice skills, Swifter. Keep at it.